Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely Stream Deck. For more information about the Stream Deck, the link is in the description below.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for Apex Online Racing Season 18, Round 1 here in Australia. I'm Ben Rwaggy McConnell, and joining me on the caster's desk is the legendary Jacob Aladar Hancocks. How are you doing?
Very, very well, thank you. Legendary is quite a compliment. I've not heard that one before, but thank you very much. I'm here today just standing in for your usual co-commentator, Amcaster, who can't make it today, so a pleasure to be by your side for today at least.
Thank you. I mean, he's been very selfish, I'll be honest. He's gone to Legoland, so can't blame him. Wish I could have gone there myself, but, you know, we are here. We do have F3 to entertain us here in Australia. It's a very exciting track overall. Tons of overtaking opportunities, especially with DRS being a factor. Obviously, that's pending the weather, which we currently don't know how that's going to be. However, we are in the qualifying already, so let's get straight into it. And I'm going to ask you straight off the bat, Aladar. You've seen some of the drivers. Obviously, we had a little conversation earlier about their sort of abilities, what they're good at, what they're not so good at. And so I want to throw you in the deep end. I can only apologize. I do this to everyone. What is your top 3 prediction for qualifying?
Top 3 prediction. Okay, well, number 1 for me at the moment has to be Skatey. I haven't seen a lot of these drivers on F1 2019, but on the previous game in previous seasons, Skatey has been a very quick driver and certainly one who's not shy of qualifying either. And he is currently the reigning F3 champion, so I think that it's only right to say that Skatey is the most likely person to take pole position today. After him, it gets a little bit more complex. The likes of Brownie. Brownie was an F2 driver here before, but Australia, as you mentioned earlier, is not his most favorite track, so he might struggle a little bit around here. And Hazard, another very solid driver who's generally been very quick, but he tends to lack it a little bit in qualifying. I do think Zones is likely to be up there. He's proved to be a bit of a qualifying specialist in the past, I believe, so I think he could well be in the top 3. So I'm going to go with, for now, Skatey, Zones, Hazard in that order, but that is very, very tentative indeed.
Now, I actually don't know very much about Skatey. I've not seen Skatey drive at all in F1 2019. So I'm going to go a little bit different to your prediction based on that alone. Paddy has been exceptionally fast. I commentated him in F4 last season, and he was really, really good. His race pace was next level. His qualifying pace on some tracks was there. But yeah, I think you're right. Zones is someone to keep an eye on as well. He is phenomenally quick. And so I'm going to give him P1. I'm going to give Paddy P2 and P3. I'm actually going to give it to Assassin. I think he has the potential and the skill to get there. Just whether or not he's going to be able to bring it here today, as we have 15 minutes remaining of the session.
Yeah, I mean, Assassin's definitely an interesting call. Assassin is a driver I have commentated on in the past, and he's always seemed to me to be slightly better in the race than he is in qualifying, so I think that's quite a bold call, if I may say so. But nevertheless, one of us will be proved right, and one of us will be proved wrong. As Zones, I think, just had to back out of his lap. I think, actually, he was probably on a flyer there, and I think he just ran wide through turn 12, so not a great start to qualifying for him, and his teammate just runs off the road in front of him as well. That's Dax, one of the new drivers in this league, who's kicking up a bit of dirt there.
I also just blocked his teammate as well. Zones was on a hot lap, but because Dax was off the track and rejoined in the way of Zones, that is going to cost him. He's going to go into the pit. So it might actually, yes, maybe teammates, but there may be some stern words said after this race, if that has actually indeed affected him later on in the session. However, I am seeing Yoltech now coming through into the final couple of corners as Andinator has actually gone ahead and put himself up there on the top spot with a 1:21.041. That is, by no stretch of the imagination, the fastest lap we're going to see today, I can assure you, as Hazard immediately sorts that right out with a 1:20.9, and Yoltech, there he is, 1:20.446, 5/10 clear of Hazard.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and revise my prediction already. Yeltech's up there now all of a sudden. 1:20.4. Pull that straight out of the bag when no one else is... Well, Hazard's just scraping the 120s, but no one else in the 120s yet. That's an exceptional lap time from the young Dutchman in the Toro Rosso here. So great start to the qualifying session from Yeltek, and first blood to him so far.
Yeah, indeed. Skatey, though, your man that you put on the top spot has just invalidated a lap. He's now on his second one, but looking at the fact that his fuel light is flashing red and his ERS levels are in mud too, it does suggest to me that he's not going to be able to attempt another lap on these tyres. He's going to go back round again, and with 13 minutes remaining, there's still tons of time for the track to evolve, still tons of time for him to think about the corners he did wrong, and then rectify that when we come to the next time out.
Yeah, I mean, he'll want to think about them a little bit, but he won't want to dwell on them too much, because if you start getting in your own head about it, that's when you can make extra mistakes and maybe turn in that little bit early and then accidentally cut the corner as a result. Of course, it was a corner cutting infringement that led to him, and a corner cutting infringement, by the way, that a lot of other people seem to have done so far. I think pretty much everyone who hasn't set a lap time so far did invalidate their laps somewhere around. So quite a lot of the field struggling with that so far. Ryzen, I believe, is the only driver currently on a flying lap. He's into Sector 3 at the moment in his racing point, but he looks like he's backed out of it as well here, yeah. Going very, very slowly here through the final sector, so he's had to back out towards the end of the lap.
Yeah, something clearly wasn't feeling right for him. He's chucking himself in the pits as well, especially with the fact that he was on those brand spanking new softs. You know, there was still prime time for him to go ahead and go again, but no, he's decided it's just not for him. But I do want to go on board with Paddy as he's coming through 11 and 12. This is a corner I very much expect to be seeing a lot of issues for most drivers there. They like to throw it into that chicane, and quite often if they get on the exit curb too much, they can destabilize the car and end up buried in that wall on the right-hand side. I do want to get round to doing a nice hot lap. In fact, I'm going to stay on board with Paddy now as we do a hot lap. I want to see how good Paddy has become in this game. And now that's the exit of the final corner. He's got the wing wide open. He's also got in mode 4 for the overtake. With his car coming out of the pits, hopefully that shouldn't affect him. No, he's definitely getting out of the way there. Brake just as you get to the 100-meter board. You want to ride that curb a little bit more. He didn't quite ride it enough, but that's 1 and 2. Now the DRS straight right the way down to turn 3. We'll see tons of overtaking opportunities coming into the race for this one. Loads of dive bomb attempts potentially. Runs a little bit wide there, but nothing too severe. Now turn 4. You don't really want to brake here. You just want to try and ease off the throttle as you now pin it all the way up towards turn 5. Keep it pinned all the way around. And when you get up to turn 6 here, you need to make sure you get nice and early on that curve. Just didn't cut it enough, but gets a nice, beautiful exit through 7. And now onto 8. Coming up towards turn 9 now. This is a beautiful little chicane, quite tight. Hard braking, there's 9, here's 10. Now the run up to turn 11. This is the chicane I was just talking about. Very easy to lose it, especially if you get a little bit too hot on the curbs, even on the entry. Not necessarily this one, because that curb is very light, but this one here, let's go through 12 and get on the exit curb. That can easily bin you, but then you have the DRS wing wide open. Should you keep your lap together, as you come up towards 13, needs to make sure he doesn't get too on the grass for that one, especially not running wide there. And up to 14 now. Beautiful run. Don't get too wide into the gravel. If you do, you are dead as you come to the second to last corner. Exit here is crucial for overtakes in the race, but also for getting a good hot lap. Wing wide open now. Has his time been the fastest? It's going to be a P4 with a 1:21.029.
Ooh, and Ghetto just goes and puts himself up there at the top in the Williams. He's another new driver this season. And another new driver, Dax, goes and puts himself up at the top with a 1:20.3. Everyone, time starting to tumble now, and that's probably a pretty disappointing lap from Paddy, actually, by his standards. He lost most of that time in Sector 1, particularly, I think, in Sector 3, or in Turn 3, rather, where he ran a little bit deep, but he was actually around 4 tenths down on Yeltek's original Sector 1 time, so not the best opening to that lap from Paddy, but at least that means that he can focus the area he needs to improve on in that opening sector of the lap.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the main thing I spotted there was turn 1. He didn't ride the curb at all. He meant to cut that corner quite severely, get on that curb and shoot off towards turn 2 so you can get a really solid exit. He didn't do that. He actually just went around the curb altogether. Then obviously you got the run up towards turn 3. Like you said, he ran wide. That cost him a lot of time. And that in itself is what will separate the times you can see between him and Yoltek, the 4 tenths you talked about. Just getting those 2 corners will make such a huge difference to his lap time and easily bring himself into the low 120s.
Yeah, absolutely, and I have high hopes for him to improve throughout the remainder of the session, but I think a lot of these drivers will be having high hopes to improve, particularly now that we've seen the time start to tumble and everyone get towards those, or more drivers rather, get towards those low 1:20s around what Yeltek has offered when he threw down the gauntlet at the opening of the session. Andonator running very wide out of the final corner. He's going to come across and set his second lap time of the session, and he moves himself up to a 1:20.5, so he moves himself up I think 2 places there. He was on a 1:21.0 though, so that's actually about half a second improvement from him, but only 2 places to show for it.
Yeah, not quite as fast as he needs to be. I mean, let's just have a look at the gap to leader. You know, you've got the top 8 drivers right now as Yoltek improves again with a 120.191. Beautiful stuff from him. But yeah, the top 9 drivers now are all separated by under a second. We're already starting to see really close battles forming before we even get to the race itself. And if this is anything to go by, I think we're in for a very exciting Grand Prix.
Absolutely, yeah. One thing to note real quick is that everyone has been running out on the soft tyres. That is not a surprise. You pretty much have to run the soft tyres if you have any hope of qualifying in the top 10 around here. And it's a pretty easy one stop for everyone, really, on the soft tyres. You can either go onto the mediums or onto the hards, but I think the vast majority of the drivers will be electing to go onto the hard tyre, as it does just last much better as you get towards the later stages of the race. Skatey now, he's coming around the final corner after a push lap here. He's looking pretty sort of within himself here. I wouldn't be surprised to see that he goes up to 4th actually, so it is a pretty good lap time. Very, very neat and tidy, so much so that he actually convinced me that he wasn't really pushing his hardest there.
Yeah, I mean, still, yes, he's P4, and it wasn't necessarily the fastest lap time in the world, but it's just marginal improvements he needs to make in order to jump to 3rd place and then jump to 2nd place. You know, 1st is a little bit further out, but we're literally talking a 10th and a bit to bring himself in front of Dax. You know, it's so easy to do. You only need to get a good exit on one corner, and that will make a massive difference. Now, Zones is he's already backed out of his lap, so it suggests he made a mistake. I imagine it had been through 1 and 2, because it's actually really quite easy to invalidate there. But that is not the first time we've seen Zones have an issue on his quali lap. He's running out of time. He needs to get something together if he wants to get there in the top spot and make my pre-1 prediction spot on.
Yeah, and now that it's the second time that's happened, he's going to start getting in his own head about it as well. He's going to be thinking, he's going to be very cognizant of the amount of time he has left, and he's going to be starting to sweat in that cockpit, I think. Ryzen, once again, another driver who invalidated his first lap time, is on another flying lap right now. Plunked the curb through turn 9 there, but seems to have got away with that pretty much without any major troubles as he goes through the long turn 10. It's effectively a back straight here and into the very fast chicane of 11 and 12. Pretty good, runs a little bit too wide at the edge of 12 and had to back out of it a little bit. I don't think he invalidated his lap, but he did have to get off the throttle pretty significantly. Otherwise, he was going to be spearing off to the right-hand side and into the wall.
Yeah, that would be tragic on your qualifying lap to have that situation. You haven't even yet set a lap time in. You know, you've already had a pretty rough qualifying session, but to then lose it on the back end and then put it yourself in the wall and retire from the qualifying would be just awful to even imagine. But here he is, now about to finish his hot lap, and he's going to go P2. That is a huge jump and a really solid lap time. A 120.281. I do think we are going to be seeing a 119 before we get to the end of this qualifying session. The question is, who is it who's going to do it? Looking at it right now, I think it's going to be Yoltek. Yeah,
I mean, Yoltek's been one step ahead of the rest of the field so far. Every time, every sort of rotation of laps, the first, when everyone set their first laps, it was Yoltek who was the fastest. Now everyone set their second laps, and once again, it's Yoltek who's the fastest. So it stands to reason that when everyone sets their third flying laps on their third sets of tyres, it'll still be Yoltek that's the fastest. But of course, it doesn't always work like that. And if it did, what would even be the point of watching qualifying? So very glad that it doesn't work like that. Get Owned, currently coming around the final corner now. He had a pretty impressive second rotation as he comes through now, currently sitting in P4 across the line and up to P2, moves himself ahead of Ryzen, but only up about 0.2 of a second. So the track is really starting to get as rubbered in as it's going to be now, and the drivers are only finding more incremental improvements from here on out.
It's insane how close that these cars are in terms of performance. You know, these drivers, I mean, sorry, they're so closely matched in skill that there's no way we're going to go through this Grand Prix and not see a load of overtakes and action throughout the entirety of it. Obviously, the problem you're going to have is this is the first race of the season. There's a lot of cobwebs that need to be dusted off here. Don't get me wrong, these drivers have probably put a lot of time in. A lot of them, I can actually say, yeah, absolutely, they've put a lot of time into practice. But it still doesn't change the fact you're racing here in Apex Online Racing. This is the most renowned Formula 1 racing league outside of the F1 esports. You know, that in itself brings a lot of pressure. You're in F3, you want to push as hard as you can, you want to join the F2 ranks and then F1 ranks, and they're all going to be feeling it. Hopefully the Iceman, who's currently on a hot lap, can keep exactly that and be the Iceman.
Yeah, the Iceman currently sitting down in 10th position in that Alfa Romeo. Runs a little bit wider than you want to do. Ooh, and on the exit curve of turn 10, I was about to mention it can get pretty slippy out there, and he had a major moment there. Held it, but that will have pretty much meant that he's going to have to abort this lap time. He's certainly not going to be going any faster than he did previously. Having said that, he's still pushing pretty hard there through 11 and 12, though, so Iceman keeping up the pressure on this lap time. It must have been a really good lap so far for that mistake not to cause him to simply back out of it. So I'm quite impressed with what must have been his opening sector of this lap into the penultimate corner now, probably the hardest corner on the whole circuit, in my opinion. And actually, no, he just wanted to get back to the pits as quickly as possible and try and get out there once more.
Yeah, we are now what I like to call the calm before the storm, as all the drivers, or most of them at least, are going to be in the pits prepping themselves for the final push, because the track now will be the greenest it's been in terms of performance throughout the entirety of this session. The drivers obviously will need to put in everything here and now. If you want to do 2 laps, you need to go out right now. That's why you're seeing the likes of Hittanen, who is out there in the Racing Point in P7. I'm not sure what necessarily he's going to plan here, because if you do 2 laps on the softs, you are going to take so much life out of the tyres. And I think that's going to cost him a lot more, because obviously there's Assassin also doing the same sort of thing, and Donator's out there. He's already done a lap, currently sat P2. If he's going to want to improve, I'm not even sure if he's going to be able to get in the pits and back out again in time for him to be able to do another hot lap. But Assassin, he's going now.
Yeah, Assassin, he's got traffic into turn 1 here, and they haven't actually got out of his way. That's Paddy, who's going to be really taking his after the ball here, and Paddy's actually completely held Assassin up there, I think. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Assassin's got away with that, but that looked pretty hairy between him and the Haas driver there, and Paddy not really looking in his mirrors there. Didn't get out of the way anywhere near as quickly as what Assassin would have been hoping for. Paddy, by the way, himself did improve on his previous lap time, but only up to a 1:20.9. So one of the drivers we thought was going to have one of the better times in this qualifying session, really struggling down there in 12th at the moment.
Yeah, it's really quite surprising. Paddy is the guy that I was fully expecting to deliver in the qualifying, but like you were saying before, he's better in the race than he is in the qualifying. He seems to be showing it here today, but he might surprise us. We've seen plenty of opportunities and plenty of evidence from other seasons and other leagues where these drivers can just do in the very last second get a hot lap in there. But yeah, Assassin getting hindered potentially by Paddy. It was very marginal. Paddy was very much unaware of what was around him. He could have used his proximity arrows, he could have used his radar, could have used the actual map itself, and he didn't choose to. So he's in trouble zones. Oh, he's made that tight for him. Actually, there he is, Assassin running wide. That is bad news bears for Assassin. He's going to be in a situation... No, he's not going for it. He's backed out. That's it. That's the end of the qualifying for him. P14 is the best he's going to get.
That is rough for Assassin. 2 pretty major incidents of traffic on the same lap, and really took his eye off it there into the penultimate corner and had a major issue with it there. Hittanen is currently out on a lap, but he just cut turn 11 in a very major way, so I'd be very surprised. In fact, he's gone down into 0 ERS mode, so I caught that, and he has indeed invalidated that lap time, so he'll have to go again. Good thing for him that he went out as early as he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it means he can go again. Even he still needs to get to the line in order to actually go again, but he'll have enough time to do that, providing he doesn't dawdle and take his time. Beaker's out there on a hot lap. Paddy is also doing the same, his teammate. I want to go up to our man Yoltek, who has set some incredible lap times so far in this session. And like you said earlier, every time we've had a round of hot laps, he's nailed it each time. Can he do it again? It's all in his hands.
Absolutely, yeah. And just going to watch him through the first sector here. Runs a little bit wide through turn 4. That will have compromised him a little bit on the curbing in turn 5 as well. But that didn't unsettle the car. Nice and stable here for the Toro Rosso driver. Very wide through turn 6 and into turn 7 there. That might have cost him a little bit of time as well as he was on the grass, but he's still pushing, so I think he's actually going to be all right for now. Into turn 9, riding the curve very nicely there and not having a major moment like we saw with Iceman earlier in the session. And Donator, by the way, he's completed his lap and didn't improve on it, so he's not going to be starting any higher than P2. Hittanen not going to be starting any higher than P7 down there in the Racing Point. And Paddy retiring from the session down in 12th position. Disappointment for the Haas driver. Skatey as well, my pick for pole. And a get owned, by the way, across the line and goes up into first position just.
Yeah, that's insane. Get Earned has really just pipped himself and knocked himself up there. Ryzen's crossed the line. He's not going to improve. Who's next to cross? Is that Yoltek? Yes, there he is.
Yep.
There's a car in front of him that's also going to do the same. That was WoW, I believe. Now here comes Yoltek. He stays P2. I mean, it's marginal. He was slower on that lap than he was earlier on in his previous hot lap. Brownie is going to cross the line. He jumps up to P5. He silences me after everything I've said about him, where he's just wasn't as fast as he needs to be. His race pace is usually pretty good, but I will wait to see if he's managed to learn much more about this track and much more about his car setup, as that is the end of the qualifying session, and Get Earned, literally living up to the name, takes pole position.
Yeah, great performance from one of the new boys here, and the Williams team as well, both new drivers, both rookies this season of AOR, and they are currently sitting in first and third on the grid. So excellent performance from the Williams boys. Not something you're used to hearing, I'm sure. Yeltek down there in second. You got to it's second, but you got to feel he'll still be disappointed with that.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's so close, so marginally. Very easy for him to have knocked himself up there. But here is your rundown. So Get Earned takes pole position with Yoltek in second, Andonator in third, Ryzen in fourth, Brownie in fifth, Dax takes sixth with Skatey in seventh, Hittonen takes eighth, Hazard in ninth, and WoW rounds out the top 10. Iceman is the best of the rest. And it's when you get to the top 12, that's when you start to just get outside of the 1 second margin on 13th place. But the top 12 are all within 0.8 of a second of each other. And that means nothing but excitement coming to this Grand Prix. We have a dry Grand Prix to match it.
Yeah, and not only that, the top 10 were within 0.4 of a second of each other. Insanely close. Even by AOR standards, that is a very tightly bunched grid. So I'm very much looking forward to what this race has in store for us. One thing to note, Zones, one of the guys we thought was really going to be challenging for it, didn't manage to string a lap together at any point. His fastest lap was a 1:32, which is about 13 seconds off the pace. And I think he invalidated every single other lap he did. So really poor showing from Zones in the opening qualifying session of Season 18. And he'll be really kicking himself after that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's also an indicator to suggest that when it comes to the actual race, if he's invalidated every qualifying lap bar one that he did as a banker, we're going to see just tons of penalties. He's not going to be able to necessarily deliver today. I'm concerned for him that normally he's a front runner, and if he's struggling this much in these situations, then he's just going to crumble. He might even finish outside of the points. The also thing to note was Rupert, who was actually trying to get involved in this. He was there in the lobby before this qualifying began. Must have had some sort of game crash or something, because he wasn't actually taking part in the qualifying, but I have seen him join. And the race has been resumed as Iceman has left the session. Hopefully he can manage to bring himself back. But that would be drama on the grid, if not.
Having a bit of trouble with WoW loading in here. He's taking a lot more time than the rest of them. Hooper, by the way, also, who is the lobby host, was also not present for the qualifying session, but is here now. So something strange happening to Hooper and Rupert. And that is very fun to say, by the way, Hooper and Rupert. But not very good news for either of those drivers. Not the way they wanted to be starting their seasons either.
No, definitely not. Hopefully the lobby issues get fixed relatively quickly. We're going to have to bear with whilst we wait for it. But whilst we are waiting, let's just talk about some of the drivers that were racing in that qualifying there. And who impressed you the most? I mean, Yoltek, for me, he came second, and it was by literally 15 thousandths of a second. That's how close it was between him and P1. It'll be, like you said, he'll be a little bit frustrated with himself that he couldn't pin it together on that final lap. It looked like he just made 1 or 2 mistakes. I think the main thing was how much he ran wide in turn 6. If he hadn't have done that, that would have literally been the difference between him getting P1 or not. But, you know, I think he's not really necessarily feeling the pressure, but he's going to be applying pressure to himself to try and push as hard as possible. But yeah, I just want to know who is going to be the main runner for you, and who's the man to keep their eye on.
I mean, I think you said it with Yelta. I mean, he's really impressive qualifying session. 3 very fast laps that he put in. Let's not underestimate that as well. Every lap he put in was fast. That being said, same could be said for Get Owned, actually, who was always there or thereabouts, usually down in about 4th position until that final lap he managed to put in. But some of the other drivers were, they had some bad laps, some good laps, or they were invalidating some. But both Yeltek and Get Owned, I'm pretty sure, didn't invalidate a single lap, and managed to put in some decent times throughout that session. So they're both definitely ones to watch. Interesting to note as well that the top 4 drivers are all either new or returning drivers to AOR who did not participate in the last season. So that's a bit of a turn up for the books as well, with Brownie being the highest placed runner who is actually who participated in AOR season 17.
So I've heard from Hooper that we are going to be restarting the lobby. So we're going to go to a very short little break. You're going to hear some lovely music and the start and stream screen again. We'll be back with you when you hear the beautiful beeps to get back underway with the session. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the technical difficulties. There was issues with a couple of people's in the game. In the game, it actually crashed. So we had to rehost the lobby in order to get this underway again. And I've just seen someone who has joined, so hopefully they've been able to make it. We're just sat here on the loading screen. We'll bear with for the meantime. But Aladar, I'm looking forward to this race. It's going to be good.
I'm looking forward to it as well. However, I do have one slight issue here, and that's the fact that Huttunen has just joined the session but isn't currently on that tower on the right-hand side, which is making me a little bit anxious about whether or not we'll actually be starting the race this time around, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we can put it off forever, so it might just be that Huttunen's unlucky if he's not able to get into the session, but I hope he can, because he had a relatively solid qualifying session, as I recall, somewhere in the lower reaches of the top 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick look in the chat just to see. I mean, they have noticed that he's obviously not here. But it looks like we may have to go again one more time. We're going to bear with and just see what the results are for this. It's unfortunate that we're having this situation.
Session does seem to be getting underway at the moment, so we'll... we may as well assume this is the correct starting. Huttunen is not there on the grid, so bear in mind, everyone, that this may well change. But at the moment, we'll just have to assume that this is the start of the actual formation lap for the actual race.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really unfortunate for Huttunen to have this situation happen. Obviously, it's out of his control. It's also out of the hands of the coordinators. And obviously, the issues we're having with the game in the minute, stability-wise, is an issue, and obviously the developers are looking into it to try and sort that out as soon as possible. But I mean, there's all sorts of things it could be, so we'll leave it to them to work it out, and we'll just leave it to us to do the commentating of the races. But just to remind everybody, for anybody who wasn't here during the qualifying session, Get Owned did a really solid qualifying pace. And obviously in the last attempt he managed to make it. Yoltek, who was looking really good throughout the majority of the qualifying session, just lost out on P1 by 15 thousandths of a second. And also a reminder, I think you said it was the top 8 were all separated by 4/10 of a second during the qualifying. Top 10, sorry, all separated by the 4/10 of a second, which is just phenomenal. And we have been told that it is going to be a dry race, so DRS is definitely going to be a factor, which means we're going to see a lot of overtaking opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Dry race, I mean, it looks pretty overcast, but I'll take your word for it on this being a dry race. Interestingly, Get Owned's absolutely motored away on this formation lap. If this was the opening lap of the race, he'd be pretty happy with a 3-second gap back to Yeltek in second. Just means he's going to be waiting on the grid that little bit longer, but I don't think that really makes much of a difference. There's also a 13-second gap further down the field where Paddy seems to have had an off somewhere around the lap, because he's not where he should be at all.
No, he's really far back. I mean, obviously that's the distance between him and the person in front of him, but he's still... yeah, right back there now. So the AI have now taken control of all of the cars on the track. So that means that they will be getting into their grid boxes for the start of this Grand Prix. And yeah, it looks like we are going to be getting underway with this Grand Prix officially. So unfortunate for Huttunen, but we are excited to get underway with the first round of Season 18 Apex Online Racing League. Alright, here we go. They're all set and ready to go as the lights come on. I'm going to go on board with Andinator for this start of this Grand Prix. He's really in a position to be able to attack the 2 Williams in the top 3, and it's all now. This moment for him. Actually, there's that's the McLaren of Hooper, who's not actually moved off the start line, so he's really in trouble. There's Ryzen, who's managed to get himself up in a P3. Andinator's lost a position as a result of that start, and it's looking pretty clean overall throughout the grid. Yes, lots of position changes, but ultimately no damage has been caused. Big lock up there from Iceman. He just goes off in towards Wow, but no damage to either car. It was very on the limit, but Iceman manages to gain that position, albeit controversially.
Yeah, yellows in Sector 1, don't know exactly what that's about. Might be Assassin, he's dropped to the back. Yeah, he's had a bit of a spin somewhere in the first few corners here. Assassin dropping all the way to the back of the field, and a big gap currently between him and Hooper, who's in 15th place at the moment. Meanwhile, Get Owned is under a lot of pressure from Yeltek, who's just behind him here into Sector 2, heading down towards the very fast chicane. If Yeltek can stay pinned to the gearbox of the Williams in front of him through turn 12, and he does, he might have a look into turn 13. No DRS yet, of course, and that is hindering the Toro Rosso driver at the moment. Can't quite pull alongside Get Owned just yet, but he's looking good, keeping very close behind the Williams ahead of him.
Yeah, he's really sizing him up right now, and Yoltek looking strong. We saw obviously in the qualifying session just how quick Yoltek can be, and I honestly think if he'd have had a solid lap on his final lap, I do think he would have been P1 in the qualifying. But right here, right now is where it matters. It doesn't matter how quick you were in the qualifying. If you suck here, you are not going to be able to get any points positions. But it's looking like he's going to sit a very comfortable P2, at least for another lap or so.
Yeah, indeed. And Andonator also taking another pretty close look at Ryzen there for third place as well. Iceman already with the first 3-second time penalty of the race, and that's not good news for the Macedonian driver, currently sitting down in 10th place at the moment. Oh, looks like there's a bit of shuffling going on down the back as Dax and Hazard are side by side. Hazard takes through the inside in turn 5 though, and holds, in fact, takes that position away from Dax, I believe. The Renault driver down to 7th place after having started in 6th position, so not the best start ever for the Renault driver, but definitely could be worse.
Yeah, Hazard did such a solid move going in from turn 3, 4, and then 5. It was they took all 3 corners in order for him to secure the position, but he has done an exceptional job of doing that. And he now sits P6 right behind his teammate, both in the Shazoo team. Let's see if they can deliver anything. But again, looking at the front as Yoltek now is going for a move on Get Owned. He's managed to get down the inside. He will take a race lead, but has he done it a little bit too early? He needs to break away pretty early. If he doesn't, he will actually have problems when it comes to the DRS zone. Remember, we do have no DRS for the first 2 zones as the detection line is right where they are now. So it will not be available for them when it comes to this lap. Oh, that's the line, sorry, there, on the exit of the final corner. Yoltek is going to have to go defensive if he wants to keep Get On behind him. He manages to just about do that, comes back to the racing line. Get On still trying to look for it, still looking for the slipstream. He might actually go for the overtake in towards turn 3, but it's going to be a big move if he can.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to have to be around the outside if it's going to be anything at all. He does keep it around the outside. The Williams driver runs a tiny bit wide onto the curbing, but he can just about keep his nose in there for turn 4. But Yoltek around the outside of turn 4 and into turn 5 holds on to first position for now. And now Ryzen all over the back of the Williams in 2nd place. And the other Williams currently sitting down in 4th place, looking very interested in this battle as well.
Yeah, it really is looking pretty hot for the top step of the podium. You know, P1 being very cozy there with Yoltek taking it. 4/10 is the gap between him and Get On, so he's really had a good exit through that corner. But anything could change at the drop of a hat. And speaking of which, Skatey and Dax have swapped places, and actually Skatey now up into P7. Remember, this is the DRS zone now on the exit of that chicane, and that's why Ryzen is actually slowly coming up towards the front now. As you can see, Get On is right down on the back of Yoltek's gearbox, ready for the home straight.
Yeah, and Ryzen really has a prime view of this battle for first position at the moment. He might be pretty content to watch these guys battle out in front and keep having to switch positions back and forth, because he can just sit there, watch them cooking their tyres in front of him, and just sit there rubbing his hands with glee, waiting for his time to come. Yoltek once again trying to break the slipstream down the straight, but getting nicely back over to the left-hand side before the braking zone, so no issues with moving multiple times in the braking zone for the current race leader. But Get Owned is nailed right onto the back of him once again. He'll be looking around the outside into turn 3. Didn't work last lap. Will he be able to make it work this lap? He's a bit more on the road this time, and up the inside of turn 4. Once again, it's Yoltek around the outside of turn 4. And once again, Yoltek is able to hold on to it, but Get Owned almost into the back of Yoltek, as Yoltek had to get out of it a little bit after running over the curbing in turn 5. And there we go. Get Owned takes advantage, pounces on the Toro Rosso driver, who moves down into 2nd place once again.
Yeah, that was such a good scrap between the 2 drivers, and already Ryzen is trying to size up Yoltek as well. But look how close the top 4 are. They are literally bumper or wing to gearbox. It's just so close. I want to see who can deliver the better performance, but I think any one of these can do it. It's now a consistency battle. Yoltek already showed a little bit of wobble early, and he's just done it again there through 11 and 12, and that's why he's lost so much time. Yes, he has DRS, and he's just using that to help defend against Ryzen, but Ryzen will be able to get a better move on him if Yoltek makes another mistake like that once more.
Yeah, and if he keeps making mistakes like that, then Get Owned might well be able to pull a bit of a lead away from the Toro Rosso driver and the rest of the pack behind. If he can do that, that would be massive for him. And Donator's had a bit of a moment sometime around this lap, because he's now a 2nd down on Ryzen, who's currently in 3rd position, and Hazard and Brownie, who recently swapped positions, are right behind him as well. Yoltek pretty close to Get Owned into turn 1, not looking to make a move just yet. Has a bit of a neater turn 1 and 2 than Get Owned, but I think actually he was driving a bit within himself there, as he's not going to be able to make a move on the Williams driver into turn 3 this time. And for the first time in 3 laps, the two don't go side by side into turn 3.
Yeah, I mean, they've really kept our heart pulses going really high. Beak again, a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That's drastic, and so is Paddy. The two Haas's dead last now are the two, and they both get a 5-second speeding penalty, and Paddy's going to lose out even more because he will be double stacked behind BK. Yep, there he is, look, just sat there, nothing more he can do. His race is being destroyed right now. But looking further up the field, we still have a battle going on for the top 3 as Andinator has dropped outside of the DRS range, and so now it's going to be can Hazard, which he already has done, bring himself up to the back of this Williams and potentially start scrapping for a podium position.
Yeah, I mean, the two Mercedes boys were kind of expecting them to have a slightly better race pace than they had qualifying pace, qualifying down there in 5th and 8th positions, respectively. But Hazard at the moment has got past his teammate and is looking, he's a very clean driver, as we know, and so he'll be looking to make his way up through the field and maybe take advantage of some of the other drivers getting some penalties towards the end of the race as well. The two Haas boys, by the way, were running together on track and both had front wing damage. Now, I'm not saying they crashed into each other and broke the cardinal rule of Formula One racing, but, you know, when there's smoke, there's fire, so who knows?
Well, not only that, the Haas are well known in the official F1 for doing that, so I wouldn't be surprised if it carried through here into the virtual version of F1. However, look how close Ryzen is to the back of Yoltek. This top 3 battle just couldn't be any tighter, and Yoltek gets a little bit too close to the inside curve, and that sends him wide just a touch. He's looking fine from it now. He hasn't really lost anything, but there's something to bear in mind is the ERS levels that Get Owned has right now. These two drivers behind him will be able to benefit from the fact that they have Slipstream and DRS. Get Owned will not have that ability, and you're going to have to see how well he can manage his ERS, and as it stands, I'm looking at the 3 drivers. Yoltek is the one who's losing out the most in terms of ERS. Get Owned is actually managing it better than the other 2 drivers, and it's these small little minor differences that will make a massive difference as to whether or not they're going to be able to hold on to the top spot. Yoltek is committed.
Yeah, and he's right up behind Get Owned once again. Get Owned, pretty significant cut through turn 12, and that will unsettle the car on the exit of that particular corner, so he might have picked up a warning for it, and it will have a bit of a double whammy there. It will have affected his run down towards turn 13 poorly as well, and that's why Yeltek was so close to the back of him. However, being that close to the back of him has actually disadvantaged Yeltek through the final sector, and he wasn't able to keep right behind the Williams as tightly as he would like to. Certainly not able to make a move into turn 1 on this. That needs to keep it nice and calm through turns 1 and 2 here. Pretty nicely done once again, but again, Get Owned slightly better run through those corners, I feel, and Yeltek's not going to be able to make a move on this lap either.
No, I mean, he sat himself in mode 2 coming out of the second corner just to make sure he didn't burn a lot of his ERS. I think he's paying attention to what we're saying. Oh, that was a big wobble there from Ryzen, and Andinator also having similar situation. Means he gets himself a 3-second time penalty for extending track limits just a bit too much, and that's actually bringing Hazard right into this attack line now. As you can see, he's sat in P5, his teammate's not that far behind him, just about has DRS on these drivers. So it's now become a full 6-way battle for race lead.
Yeah, and Ryzen had a bit of a mistake there coming out of turn 10 in the traction zone. Not enough for Andinator to pull up right behind him because there was about a second worth of gap between them, but that's come right down to 0.2 of a second now. Andinator has the DRS zone down towards, or the DRS available to him rather, down towards turn 13, but Ryzen just about has it from the guys ahead of him as well. So he's, big moment on the exit of turn 13 though, as he tries to accelerate with one of his rear wheels on the grass there, and a messy turn 14 as well for Ryzen. Turn 15 a little bit neater for the Racing Point driver, but he's crucially not going to have DRS down this main straight here. 1.1 seconds behind Yeltek in second position, and Andinator will be smelling blood in the water right now.
He will be. I think he's actually going to get him before we even get to the first corner. It was a little bit of a defensive move there from Ryzen. They're going to be going side by side through, and Ryzen loses the back end. This is actually going to bring Hazard into this mix as well. He managed to get through. Ryzen gets a penalty as a result. He managed to keep his car alive, and actually Brownie managed to get past him as well. So 3 positions lost from one small mistake from Ryzen, and he's going to have to do everything he can now to bring himself back into this.
Tell you what, that was rude in the extreme from Andinator. Not quite breaking the rules, I don't believe, but he really pushed Ryzen to the inside and over the curbing on the inside of turn 1, and that's what caused Ryzen to pick up that time penalty, was because he cut the corner, but he had to cut the corner because Andinator was forcing him up there on the inside, and Hazard with a big error there. Once again, coming out of turn 10, proved to be a pretty tricky traction zone for most of the drivers here, and he swapped positions with his teammate Brownie, who's been able to take advantage of the mistake that Hazard makes, and a mistake Hazard made What a rare thing to have to say about him. Ryzen now, he's the one who's looking to take advantage of someone else's mistake, as Hazard's having to go defensive into turn 13, but retakes the racing line before the braking zone and will stay ahead of the Force India, or rather the racing point for now.
Yeah, that Ryzen's racing point is looking a little bit twitchy on the rear end. He just got a little bit too wide again. Again, his acceleration just a bit too hot, and that actually meant that he lost it just a tiny bit, but enough for him to now be in a position where he is right now, where he is just chasing the air that the Mercedes are leaving behind. There's no changes to race lead as it stands, but there is a beautiful battle going on a little bit further downfield as Hooper is in P9. Zones is doing his best to close up to the back of him, and he is the fastest driver that's not on the soft compound tyre as it stands. And I fully expect those on these soft tyres to be coming in the next lap or so, as the wear on those tyres will really start to be kicking in now.
Yeah, Zones is the last of the drivers who is running the Contra strategy, starting on the medium tyres, who hasn't had an issue. Assassin is still on those tyres as well, still on the same strategy, but he had a big moment in the first sector of the first lap. And oh no, Hooper's around! I think Zones tapped into the back of the McLaren there, and Hooper into the wall. I don't think anyone else picked up any damage from that, but that's not good news. I might be doing Zones a disservice. It was very close between his front wing and Hooper's gearbox, though, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of contact there between the Renault and the McLaren.
There was definite contact. It looked like Zones was just outpacing Hooper too much, and rather than trying to go around him, he sort of expected to see Hooper do something about it, and he couldn't, but they are going side by side through turn 11 and 12, and somehow Zones has managed to keep himself together, is actually ahead of Iceman now, and also has DRS to defend with as well. Hooper's having more issues with a 3-second time penalty due to multiple warnings, and yeah, I think that one will be very swiftly going to the stewards after this.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. Ryzen, first of the front runners into the pits in the racing point. You said he was getting very twitchy. He'll be very glad to get rid of those massively overheated soft tyres now, and I'm sure he'll be putting on a set of the hard tyres after coming in. Oh, yeah, no, that is the hard tyres. Briefly told me it was the mediums, but it is the hard tyres for the racing point.
Iceman just went for a massive dive down the inside of Zones, and it didn't work out at all. He sent Zones off into the grass as well. There was no damage between the two, but Zones loses 2 places. Iceman ends up sort of just staying exactly where he is. But that was a very dangerous move from Iceman. He could have easily have killed Zones or himself, and himself, to be honest. But somehow both drivers are still going. I don't think either of them have any damage either. I don't know how that happened, but it's happened.
Yeah, I mean, Christmas came early for Rupert there, who was able to regain those 2 positions, or rather take those 2 positions away from Iceman and Zones, thanks to that massive dive moment, as you mentioned, from Iceman. Perhaps a little bit of irresponsible driving there in the Alfa Romeo, and Zones is right behind him once again. Speaking of right behind, Yeltek is now 0.3 of a second. That's closer than he has been for a few laps, behind Get Owned up at the front, and Get Owned really not driving away from the Toro Rosso driver at the moment. Expect one of them to come into the pits any moment now, and it's Get Owned who goes in very late into the pits, but Yeltek responded immediately and also went into the pits. I wonder if that was intentional, because it looked like Get Owned was trying to fake that he wasn't going to go into the pits before actually in the end going into the pits.
I think Get Owned might actually lose this place here because of the penalties. They're both into the box at the exact same time. And who is getting away first? It looks like it's going to be the Toro Rosso, but they are just about staying where they are. That couldn't have been any closer as they come through. Now it's about the exit. Make sure you get as clean a run as possible if you want to get a good position or in a running position. And Yoltek gets DRS because of how close he was to the back of Get Owned at the start. On the entrance to the pit lane. I think this is about to get spicy, considering the tyre strategies that they've both differently gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. Medium tyres for Yeltek and hard tyres for Get Owned. Medium tyres as well for Hazard, who was struggling with those soft tyres, really struggling to make them last by the scene, because they're making a few mistakes on those tyres. So it's interesting that Hazard has gone for the strategy which requires more tyre conservation, as Get Owned makes a mistake on the cold tyres into turn 6 through turn 7 now, up towards turn 9. Here comes Yeltek up the inside. It's going to be a very brave move if he sticks his nose in. He does. Get Owned very politely doesn't cut across him. And now Yeltek gets the better run out of turn 10 and down towards turn 11. And Yeltek is going to take the position away from the Williams driver unless Get Owned can perform an absolute miracle around the outside of turn 11, and he can't.
Yeah, but he does have DRS now. He's also got a hell of a lot of ERS in comparison to Yoltek. The pace he's chucking in as Paddy's retired from the session. Oh, there's contact between the two of them. There was a little bit of a nudge there from Get Owned into the back of Yoltek. Nothing too severe, but Yoltek would definitely have felt that. He had to counter steer in order to make sure he didn't lose the car. But Yoltek now will be feeling the wrath of the Williams breathing down his neck, as he knows that Get has got the pace. He knows that when he gets into the slipstream and DRS range of Yoltek, that Yoltek will be in serious trouble.
Yeah, although actually Geton running pretty deep into turn 1 there. That won't help him trying to make a move on Yeltek this lap. Currently Zone's out there in the lead at the moment. He started, of course, on the medium tyres, and Iceman, despite what must have been a really massive lockup to go with that moment where he went really far off track with that massive dive bomb, is still running out there. He's the last runner on the soft tyres not yet to pit. So that's an interesting strategy from him. It's not like he's having to wait for his teammate either, because he is the only Alfa Romeo in this race. So can't really understand why he's decided to go quite so long on those tyres into the race.
More dramas from the Haas team. Both drivers are out of this Grand Prix. I mean, Beaker was saying he wasn't feeling particularly great before this race anyway, but he is sadly out. So no points will begin for the Haas team in the first round of this season, but still tons of races to go for the remainder of the season, so easily can retract that sort of issue there, if you like. But looking around the field, Zones, like you say, is still leading Iceman on those softs. I do think he's just going to try and do a softs to medium strategy, but I don't think he realizes he can actually switch to the mediums now and go the rest of the race pretty comfortably. He will have to worry on the final few laps, because they will start to just disintegrate as he's going round. But as long as he doesn't take turn 11 and 12 too hot, then he will be okay, as he's chucked himself into the pits, and Yoltek sets the fastest lap.
Yeah, Yeltek's really going to have to drive away from Geton now, because his tyres around the 22 lap mark. Geton left the session. What on earth has happened there? That's terrible news for the Williams driver. He's ghosted. He's left the session. He's not going to be able to... He might be able to get back into the session. Meanwhile, behind them...
Andinator just turned into Skatey and sent Skatey facing the wrong direction. Somehow Andinator manages to stay in front of everyone, but Skatey ends up losing 2 places. He was going for a move on Andinator anyway, and that is bad news bears for Skatey. And I think the stewards are going to have a fair few incidents to review after this race, but it's also bringing Hazard now up into the mix for this. He's right on the back of the Williams. The Williams driver is on fresher mediums by a lap, but I don't think it's going to make any difference because of the pace that these Mercedes drivers are chucking down, as well as the fact that they were within DRS range, means that it's likely going to be Mercedes passing this car shortly.
Yeah, one thing we should note is that Ryzen pitted the first out of the top runners and managed to affect the undercut very well. Currently up in 3rd position, what is de facto 2nd position in this race once Zones comes into the pits now that Get-Owned has unfortunately lagged out of the session or something along those lines, and he's going to have to hope that he can get back into the session as quick as possible, otherwise his race is going to be completely down the drain. Currently going slowly around the track is his ghosted car. Meanwhile, Andinator currently behind him, but should be getting past him any moment now with a train of cars behind him. And I was going to say as well that Skatey really, the pit stops really went well for Skatey as well. He gained some positions, but after that incident with Andinator, that's all gone back down the drain.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, Skatey was looking dead set on, sitting in a comfortable P4, and the pace that he was chucking down was more than enough to get up there. Geton has returned, so he will be able to take control of his car again and get back up the places. The pace he had and the ERS levels he had means he can easily just chuck it in. He's on the hard tyres, so he's got no issues in making it to the end of the race, even if he was doing hot laps from this moment forward. But it is going to be tough to deliver when you've got the likes of Hazard and Brownie in front of you, and Andinator also really giving it everything. To think that potentially Get-On could have actually been a race winner had that issue not have happened.
Yeah, absolute tragedy for the newbie in the Williams, and he's still not back in his car at the moment, which suggests to me that he's having a bit of trouble either loading into the session or being able to regain control of his car. So this could be bad news for Get-On. The longer he waits before retaking control, the worse it will get for him. He's currently down in 8th position, which is de facto 7th if once Zones pits, but it's still not anything like the 2nd position he was running in earlier in the race, and of course the 1st position he was running in earlier in the race, so really bad news for him. Skatey already having passed him. I think Skatey might have some front wing damage though, because his pace has really dropped off relative to the cars ahead of him.
Yeah, it could also be a mentality issue as well. I mean, whenever you get into those sorts of incidents, it can easily set you into that negative mindset, and then everything just starts to go wrong for you if you can't clear that very quickly. And that's what separates the good drivers from the great drivers. The great drivers will be able to reset their mentality and push hard, and also not get time penalties like Assassin has just got for a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings.
Speaking of time penalties, so I did see a moment ago, Yeltek also popped up with a 3-second time penalty of his own, so he is not impervious out there in the lead at the moment, while his main competitor for the lead, Ghetto, who was, you have to say, probably on the better strategy, judging by the other races I've seen, going on to the hard tyres does seem to be the way to go in general, though quite a lot of the drivers have gone for the medium tyres in this particular race. It's not all over. It's not... Yeltek can't just rest on his laurels right now, because Ryzen, of course, is on those hard tyres, is only 3.6 seconds behind him, and Yeltek, of course, does have that penalty, so that's effectively 0.6 of a second behind him that the racing point currently is.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, Assassin's had a major issue coming through Sector 2 there. I think that's turn 10 he's made a big oof at. He's, I don't think he's lost any wing. I think he just lost control of the rear of the car. You can see on his front left he's got a lot of debris still. Not feeling particularly comfortable. He's not yet pitted, 14 laps in on these medium tyres. Same for Zones. And Zones has decided he's going to take them a little bit further as he's started lap 15.
Ghetto has finally regained control of his Williams, but not before he lost another position to Wow125, driver we haven't mentioned terribly much so far in the Red Bull, currently sitting in 8th position, so not a bad performance for Wow. It's a decent point scoring position at the moment.
Yeah, it's good to see that he's... Oh, what's happened there? Zones has just lagged behind Yoltek. He was quite clear of him about 2 seconds, and then suddenly, bam, he's right behind Yoltek. I mean, he's been having a lot of screen freezes anyway, and he's got damage on the left-hand side of his car. That wing, that end plate is missing, I believe, if I saw that correctly. And that's obviously not going to help him at all. Yep, he is definitely missing, so Zones is going to be having a lot of issues doing right-hand corners, as unfortunately he's about to come up to one right here. Let's see if he's actually... Oh, he runs a bit wide there, getting onto the grass. That will not be helping him. Bad news bears for Zones.
Yeah, absolutely, and unfortunately for him, it is a clockwise circuit, so the majority of the turns are right-hand turns. So not very good news for the Renault driver, and that is the sort of damage, judging by the amount of pace he's using to Yeltek, who admittedly is the race leader and is on much fresher medium tyres. Zones is going to have to be really thinking about changing that front wing in the pit stops, and maybe he's actually having to come in a little bit earlier than he would want to as well. I don't think he's going to be able to strap on a set of softs. Well, he could just about strap on a set of softs for the remainder of this race, but he will be pushing it. Yeah,
I mean, 12 laps is going to be excessive. I mean, he's going for it. He's committed now. His strategy was going to be mediums to softs. Nonetheless, he will have incredible pace and performance, but the thing to think about is, whilst he does have a lot less fuel on the car than at the start of the race, he will also be in a position where he'll be taking a lot more life out of them because of how much he's going to be chucking them into the corners and really trying to just chuck down some qualifying level pace. A similar sort of situation that Andine is doing to catch up to the back of Ryzen.
Yeah, we did see, of course, Iceman actually earlier in the race. He ran 11 laps on those soft tyres from the very race beginning, and that was on a much heavier car as well. So it is possible, I believe, to run those softs to lap 12, but it's really suboptimal, and Zones will have to find that balance between pushing all out and trying to regain as many positions as he can as quickly as possible, and yet holding on to the tyres as well. Andinator now 2.5 tenths of a second behind Ryzen, and Ryzen really needs to hold on to this position, because if he's going to be hoping to challenge Yeltek towards the end of the race, he needs to stay ahead of Andinator for the next few laps. It's about 4 more laps before the hard tyres become in the ascendancy, I do believe, and I think the mediums will start to go off around lap 21. So Ryzen really wants to hold on until that point, so he only has one. He doesn't have to bother with getting back past Andinator once the race comes to him to be able to chase down Yeltek up ahead. Speaking of that, though, Yeltek's actually lost time to Ryzen over the last couple of laps, about half a second over the last 2 or 3 laps to the racing point behind, and it's a bit early in the race for that to be happening.
Yeah, I wouldn't... I'm hoping that I don't need to be worried about that. I think Yoltek is in a position where he can actually just sort of bide his time, conserve his tyres, because remember, he is doing the softs to medium strategy, as are a lot of these drivers, but he needs to also think about, if somebody gets close to me in a few laps time, I'm going to need to make sure I've got better grip on my tyres than he does. And Andinator, again, a 3-second tyre penalty there will be crucial if it comes to the battle for P2 and potentially P3, bearing in mind that Yoltek also has penalties.
Yeah, and Andinator, that's not his first 3-second time penalty of the race. It's at least his second one. It may well be his third. They've been coming pretty thick and fast throughout this race, so I may well have missed 1 or 2 for some of the front runners. I don't believe Ryzen had a penalty, but I'm not willing to swear by that. Yeltek does definitely have 1 penalty. I'm pretty sure of that one at the moment. And Ryzen, having having mentioned that Ryzen closed the gap down to about 3 seconds to Yeltec, since then it's been pretty much pegged there. Yeltec hasn't lost any additional time to Ryzen over the course of this lap, but that might partially be an issue with Ryzen having to drive in his mirrors a little bit as well, with Andinator pretty close behind him.
Yeah, I also want to look at Get On as well. It's a bit further down, obviously due to his, I'm assuming his game crashed or something along those lines. He's down there in P8, but I'm not seeing the pace that we saw earlier on in the session. We saw him really chucking it in, and it's just not working out for him as it stands. He's sitting at P8, and he's under attack from Rupert, who's 8 laps in on these mediums. Also looking up further afield as Ryzen is defending hard against Andinator. Andinator was looking for an opportunity to try and attack. There was nowhere for him to go. Hazard is just teetering on the limit for DRS, but we do have a few more corners to go before we get to that point.
Dax picking up another 3-second time penalty, currently sitting down in 13th position, and with the oldest tyres of anyone, he had to pit on around lap 6 onto that hard set of tyres, so not a good race from the Renault driver. He started inside the top 10 and would have been pretty hopeful going into the race, but it has not panned out well for him, and it's not panned out well for Zones either, so the Renault team having a bit of a shocker, not quite as bad as the Hasses, but not great either.
No, definitely not. Iceman has been right on the back of Hooper for a little while now. Hooper just getting a little bit wide there on the exit of the first corner, and that's actually cost. Sorry, the turn 10. He's now in a position now where he's actually got Iceman right down the back of him. Iceman took that a little bit more delicately than he probably should have done, and now he's lost a fair bit of time, but he does have DRS and the slipstream to help him close up on Hooper. Somehow he's going to look for a very late move down the inside. It's actually sending both off wide. They're both into the gravel, and Iceman's gone right off into, and he's reset to the track as well. That is not ideal. He could have easily been in the way of all the other cars on the track there. Iceman, that is the second incident I've seen him involved in where he's gone for a dive down the inside, and he's being anything but Iceman right now.
Yeah, absolutely not cool, calm and collected in that cockpit whatsoever, and he is going to be hauled straight to the stewards after this race is over. That was a pretty shocking dive bomb, I've got to say, up the inside of that corner. That really was not on for Iceman, and that's really bad news for Hooper as well, who was running fairly solidly in 10th. It wasn't the best race ever for the McLaren driver, and he actually last season he scored in 9 out of the 10 races in season 17 which he participated in. So that is really consistent point scorer, Hooper, but that really, that can happen to anyone. That was outside of his control, and now look, seems to have got into his head a little bit as well, getting a 3-second time penalty the very next lap, so pretty bad news for him. Iceman also down in 12th, and I doubt that's going to be I doubt he's going to finish anywhere above 12, maybe above Dax potentially, but I imagine he's going to have some pretty hefty penalties slapped onto his race time once the stewards have had their words.
Yeah, Iceman really needs to evaluate his driving abilities and just his intentions. That was not at all an opportunity for him to send as wide as he did. I mean, he was fast, don't get me wrong. He was really gaining onto the back of Hooper and actually was alongside of him for the most part. Actually, 1 second as Andinator's going to go right the way around the outside. He's made a big mistake. Straight off into the gravel goes Andinator. Just carried way too much speed. Turned in a bit too early, and he's right off there now. He's lost 2 places as a result. And Skatey, who we saw earlier, had issues. I think it was Skatey and Iceman, who we saw earlier, have the problem. So both McLarens getting hit by that one Sauber driver, or Alfa Romeo driver, apologies. But we are seeing Skatey now, right on the back of Andinator. The situation has been resumed. It was Skatey chasing Andinator earlier when Skatey got involved in that incident. And it's now back to how it was before. Skatey needs to really commit with the fact that he's on these hard tyres and just push for the remaining 8, 9 if you include the one that they're on, laps.
If I remember correctly, it was actually Andinator who had that issue with Skatey, so he might well be gearing up to see round 2 with what will be a very frustrated Andinator in that cockpit now. He's not had the cleanest race either. One incident earlier with Skatey, another one where he really squeezed Ryzen to the inside into turn 1 while trying to defend the position from him, or rather overtake him, actually, I think it was. So Andinator has been pretty aggressive so far, and that move all the way around the outside of turn 3, braking way too late. It's just the signs of frustration, I think, from him.
Yeah, I think his eyes were a little bit bigger than his driving abilities in that respect. He looked for an opportunity, he saw an opportunity, and then just missed it just by quite a margin. It cost him a lot. He's now fallen from P3 down to P5. He's under attack from Skatey. And just want to talk about the penalty side of things. So Yoltek has 3 seconds of time penalties, and so does Ryzen. So as it stands, them two will stay exactly how it is. Hazard doesn't have any penalties, neither does Brownie, and we know Andinator has penalties. In fact, Andinator has 6 seconds of penalties, plus a warning as well. So he's in a position where he needs to rein it in a little bit if he wants to keep himself up there in the top 5 position.
Absolutely, and Yeltek actually has built that gap to Ryzen now, 4.2 seconds between those guys. So Yeltek really did have that pace in hand, and he was just holding back, trying to hold on to those tires a little bit. Hazard closing down to Ryzen, but he needs to be doing it slightly quicker than he is doing at the moment. Iceman, by the way, has been into the pits once again, and he's been off the road once again. I think he lost it on the exit of turn 12, didn't quite see the incident itself, but saw him recovering to the track. So really messy race from Iceman, and a lot for him to look back on and rue and really think about and try and process before the next race. That is assuming he is allowed to participate after the incidents he's had so far. I don't think it's been quite that bad, but you never know.
I think he had the potential to be that bad is the main thing. And, you know, 2 incidents we've seen from him where he just made some very questionable decisions. He was very lucky. It was Zones, that was who it was, sorry. It was Iceman and Zones had a big off going in towards turn 1. And Iceman went straight into the side of him, sent him wide. Zones managed to keep himself out of the wall and completely out of damage. But that could have very easily gone the other way around. It could have been Zones out of this Grand Prix, and Iceman would have been very firmly slapped on the wrists. But we'll see how severe those penalties are if and when the stewards get to reviewing them. I imagine they will be reviewing them. Just how severe I think it's going to be pretty harsh. I think he has to have that harsh warning just to let him know where he stands.
Yeah, I mean, 2 times in one race is enough to really throw the book at him, I think. And actually, interestingly, though, Zones is now currently in the points because of the incident between Iceman and Hooper. So maybe that was Iceman's way of actually, saying, oh, I'm really sorry, Zones. Here, have this. And then he pushed Hooper off the road to make sure that Zones could get back in the points. Maybe I'm being a bit fanciful with that one. Currently, no drivers really close to each other on the track at the moment, apart from Rupert, who's been really close, really tight up behind Ghetto for a long time now, 6 laps at least, and he's been within a second that whole time, but he hasn't been able to make a move on the Williams driver ahead.
Yeah, it really hasn't. Get On is actually in a pretty good position if you think about it. 12 laps in on these hards. The drivers in front of him, or at least the driver in front of him, has done 16 laps on those hards, so his pace versus tyre wear is actually going to be much better for Get Earned because he will be able to close in the coming laps. He's already slowly bringing that gap down more than we would have thought. And I think he might actually be able to gain a couple of places. I think Wow's got penalties. Skatey's clean enough to not get penalties. He will also get the position on his teammate Andinator as it stands. So it could easily be better than we thought for Get Earned, considering the fact he was battling with Yeltek for race lead.
Yeah, but anything other than a podium is going to be really frustrating for him because he knows that was completely outside of his control. He did nothing wrong, and yet he's had this really harsh thing happening to him. And the thing is, he can't even express his anger towards another driver. He can't have a bit of a contretemps after the race and, message someone angrily or something like that because it was no one. It was just the whims of the internet gods that decided to take this race away from him. Really a big shame for Ghetto. And I think the fact that he doesn't have anyone to blame for it, and it's not his own fault, just means that it's that little bit extra frustrating as well. But hopefully he'll come back strong going into the next race. Excellent pole position from him in his rookie season, his very first race in AOR. Great performance from him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even with that issue, he can still take so much credit from his work today. Getting pole position in your debut race is just something to really admire. I think Ghetto should really just take this race as a learning curve and try to understand what went wrong with his game as to whether he crashed or whether a network issue. Is it something he can prevent for the next time? The answer is probably going to be a no, but at least it's something he can look into and just know that it wasn't his fault that he was in this position. But yeah, let's just review the race so far. We do still have 4 laps remaining, 5 if you include the one that they're on right now. Yoltek is leading after a really solid performance from him, both in the qualifying and in the race. Ryzen is there in P2 on the hard compound tyre, will have better tyre wear for the remainder of this race, but ultimately it's going to be for nothing. I just saw Rupert really lose it, and he's lost a lot of time between him and Get Earned.
Yeah, I think those medium tyres are starting to struggle now, particularly with someone like Rupert who's been running in the dirty air very close behind Get Earned for pretty much the whole stint on those medium tyres. So his will be getting pretty second-hand by this point. Ryzen is closing down Yeltek and building the gap to Hazard behind as well. So it is the time for the hard tires now, but it's happened a bit later in the race than I was expecting it to. That's bad news for Ryzen. Both him and Yeltek, by the way, are one warning away from picking up a second time penalty. So that's going to be something to watch come the end of the race as well. Yeltek's really going to be sweating in that cockpit, desperately trying to keep it on the road.
Yeah, he really, really is. So something to note as well, Skatey also has 6 seconds of penalties. So between Andinator and Skatey, they won't lose a place to either one or the other, but they will lose places to both WoW and Get Owned, depending on how many penalties WoW has. Get Owned has a big donut ring of penalties, 0 seconds against his name. So those 2 6-second penalties means he will jump up to a good solid P5. Oh, that was a big mistake there from Andinator. Zone's getting another penalty as well. Andinator just getting a little bit happy on the accelerator there, and that should put him over towards the wall. You can see his left end plate is missing now, so any right hand turn is just going to be so difficult for him. And considering the amount of right hand turns where it requires aerodynamic pressure, he's in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely he is. And speaking of trouble as well, Ryzen is closing down Yeltek now. He's going to probably be within 3 seconds of the Toro Rosso ahead come the end of the race. So it is going to come down potentially to penalties if Yeltek can't keep it on the black stuff for the remaining 3 laps. High pressure scenario for the 14-year-old Dutchman in that Toro Rosso. And can he cope with it? I mean, it'd be very, very impressive if he does.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what you were saying, yeah, he's 14 years old. This kid, which is what he is effectively, is really delivering. You know, give it a couple of years. When he's eventually 16 years old, he'll be able to then qualify for the F1 esports side of things. And, you know, the development that can go from now until that point can be so massive. It could very easily go towards him being more than quick enough for the F1 esports. He's got a lot to learn, but as it stands right now, he's really delivering.
Yeah, and it's on a knife edge, though. So this is really an excellent test of his mettle. I'm really fascinated to see how well he deals with it coming to the end of the race. I'm on board with him at the moment, and it's all looking pretty smooth. He's not losing. He's not, crucially, also, he's not sacrificing too much time to Ryzen behind. So Ryzen doesn't seem like he's going to be able to overtake Yeltek on track. He is closing it down a little bit faster now, and those hard tyres are going to get better and better relative to the medium tyres throughout the remainder of the race, but a 2.3 second buffer is pretty significant at the moment, so Yeltek should be okay if he keeps going at the pace he's at right now. And so he really needs to find that balance between driving safely and making sure he doesn't run wide on the exits and run over the inside curbing of all the corners, trying not to pick up any more warnings, but also not sacrificing too much time to the car behind.
Right. I want to point something out to you now. Yeltek, yes, he's currently sat P1. He's just lost a second in such a short space of time to Ryzen. They are both really chucking everything, even the kitchen sink here, to try and defend the P1 or attack the P1. ERS levels are looking very thin on the ground. We are about to have a very exciting final 2 laps. There's a potential that we could see some battles further on as Andinator gets a 3-second time penalty. Skatey on the back of him now with DRS wing wide open. Slipstream being a huge factor. We saw it earlier. There was an incident going on between the two of them before. Same corner, but this time it's going to be Skatey going around the outside. And Skatey manages to deliver such an overtake. Round the outside now on the hard tyres is up to P5. The penalties are against Skatey. I think they're now matched, but they will drop quite a lot of places. They might even drop to down to P9 for both of them, or P9 and 8.
Yeah, it depends on what Rupert has. I haven't been keeping up with Rupert's race in particular, so I don't know exactly how much in the way of penalties he has. WoW is closing up to the back of them as well, with them battling, and WoW has had a really quiet race down there in the Red Bull, currently sitting in 7th position, but as you said, looking to inherit at least 2 positions from Skatey and Andinator, so he is really sitting pretty down there at the moment. And, you know, very quiet race, no real battles going on, and nothing spectacular from him, but a very solid drive nonetheless.
Yep. Pay attention to the front runners now. That gap is down to 1.7 seconds as we come around the final corner to start the final lap. It's already bringing it down to 1.5. Yeltek's tyres are in big trouble now, but not only that, his ERS levels are in even worse trouble as he's just hit a single digit there on the ERS levels. If he doesn't get a nice tidy run through this lap, he's under so much pressure. Like you said, he now has to think about how well he can push on this condition. He has to not only do what Verstappen did in Hungary. I mean, he didn't manage to pull it off in the end, but Yoltek on dead tyres, being chased by a faster car who hasn't got dead tyres. Whilst he's got no ERS levels available to use, he's also got flashing red fuel, so he has to be very careful on how much fuel he deploys. He's under attack, and I don't think there's much he can do about it.
Yeah, a fuel light has come on for Yeltek as well. They're both really getting down to the bare minimum now as they come towards the end of the race. It's very intense. Yeltek does still have the upper hand, of course. Ryzen probably won't be able to make the move on track unless Yeltek makes some sort of error. But of course, with his tyres as old as they are, that's not without the realms of possibility whatsoever. Ryzen now within a second almost, but not quite in time to make it into the DRS zone down towards turn 13. That could be crucial at the end here. A bit of a lock-up for Ryzen on the inside, right? And Yeltek running a tiny bit wide through the exit of turn 13. But I think Yeltek's going to be able to hold on to it.
Yoltek now coming round the second to last and just entering the final corner. Yoltek, who delivered an exceptional performance in the qualifying, has brought it home to take the 25 points. Ryzen sits in a solid P2 with Hazard down there in P3. He doesn't gain any positions. He'll take third. Brownie will take fourth. Skatey will finish the crossing line in fifth as Andoneta will take sixth. But you can see them now start to fall down the order as Getund jumps up to P5. After a really solid performance in the qualifying and a game crash partway through where he lost a lot of positions, a nice solid P5 is a good consolation prize given the situation, and Dax will eventually cross the line. He's actually run out of fuel. He's going to lose a position here. Zones will tear it on past him. That's his teammate going through. Zones will cross the line. Is it going to be enough? He might actually lose a place to Hooper as well. He does. Dax does replace the position back due to penalties. But no points gained for Dax, Hooper, Assassin, and Iceman. And Iceman, well, it's a different story for him. He might even get more penalties when it comes to the stewards.
Yeah, I mean, Iceman and Assassin both had pretty bad races today, it has to be said. Assassin, though, all on his own, not harming anyone else. Same cannot be said for Iceman, who very appropriately crashes straight into the back of the Red Bull as soon as the race is over as well, finishing last of all the runners who crossed the line, down in 14th position.
Well, there it is. That is Yoltek on the top step of the podium. He's going to be very happy with his performance. And as I said, there's still so much potential to unlock in this guy. And as he hoists the trophy up high, he's going to be very happy with a solid 25 points and a kickstart into his career here in Apex Online Racing. I want to see if he can make it later on in the season to take the Drivers' Championship. But it's not going to be easy given how much potential all these drivers have here on this track and the season overall.
Yeah, and I know we've mentioned it already, but the mental fortitude he displayed towards the closing laps when he was on 2 warnings for quite a long time, and he was able to hold on to it, keep it on the road. Excellent stuff from him. Yeltek coming through in first position, but it was close. And Ryzen, who was 6th during the first stint and had to undercut a lot of the drivers, really made that work absolutely fantastically to get second position. Hazard, once again, a very clean drive from him. A couple of mistakes in the opening stint, but no penalties, crucially. And so he holds on to third position with his teammate Brownie in fourth. A solid result for the Mercedes-AMG Petronas drivers. Interestingly, that issue with Dax and Zones when they swapped positions was actually really, really good for Renault, because what it meant was that Zones got into the top 10, and Zones had the fastest lap of the race, having pitted once again for yet another set of soft tyres right before the end of the race. So actually, by switching Dax and Zones around, even though it was accidental, Zones was able to get 2 points, while Dax would only have been able to get 1.
Yeah, doubled up on those points. So here's your final rundown. Yoltek takes first with Ryzen second, Hazard third, Brownie fourth, Getun fifth, Skatey sixth, Wow seventh, Ripper eighth, and Nathan ninth, and Zones takes the final points position in this race. So that is it from us here at the Apex Online Racing. It's been an absolute pleasure to commentate for you. I've been Ben Rwaggy McConnell. This has been Jacob Aladar Hancox. Thank you so much for commentating with me. I really appreciate him filling in for Mkasa whilst he's away celebrating in Legoland. But you've been an exceptional co-commentator. Thank you so much. And for more Apex Online Racing action, we'll see you next week when we return for Bahrain. But good night.